Council meetings. Let me go ahead and get the camera flipped around. They're getting ready to start. We'll be starting in just a few minutes. But until then, let me go ahead and set up another account here so we can be live on more than one media at a time. This one is one of these small meetings that a lot of people don't come to, but it's very significant what's going to be talked about today. So you don't want to miss out if you want to see really the serious things. As much as we talk about water slides and everything else, what's happening here is very significant for the citizens of Fort Smith and could have a lot of ramifications on what happens to your pocketbook and other things. Okay. We'll set that one up. And we are good. Hi everyone. Welcome in to another City Council meeting here at Fort Smith. So we're going to get to see the dark underbelly of what happens within our city. Oh, I guess I need to actually...
You still running?
I am. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Yes. And you
Hi.
met my wife?
Yes. It's good to see you guys again.
It's good to see you.
We should get some interesting gossip here in just a second.
Yes. I didn't know you had 2 cameras.
Yeah, well, sometimes it just depends. Sometimes I have 3 or 4. I can attach
Do you
more.
really?
Well, yeah, because I talk to people on all different kinds of medias all at once. So, like right now, you're talking to 40 people here, and we just started. There'll be 400 people here in just a minute.
Okay.
You want it to be seen?
Sure. Why not?
Oh, no, not me.
You don't, just him. So, would you vote for a vampire?
Yes.
You would?
Yes.
See there? Everybody that thinks that nobody would vote for a vampire, right? What do you guys know? So, I stream these meetings for people that can't be here, and
Very good.
then I'll have them recorded because I don't necessarily trust the city's page to keep all that stuff secured. And also, it gives exposure to my audience for the issues and what I think about it, so I can go outside and talk to everybody about what I think about what just happened, and then that's recorded.
And you're a media specialist anyways.
I didn't mean to be, but I kind of am. It wasn't on purpose.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It wasn't by choice.
But I thought that was your...
I did internet technology marketing for years and years and
College.
years. Yeah. well,
Yeah, okay.
Hi.
For you.
Oh, thank you.
Here, we better sit down.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
gonna start up.
Excellent.
Now you're hooked up.
Now I have the things I need to know. Cool. Cool. You'd vote for a vampire, right?
It's possible. I'm open.
Hear that? People will vote for a vampire. Yeah, I'm excited about your bench project. I really am.
Boom.
I'm very excited about it. So, have you had any progress since Friday?
Yeah, I met with FSPD this morning and I met with Maggie Rice at City Hall.
Okay. So the Fort Smith would just look to see if somebody was there, or what would the Fort Smith
We were
meeting?
actually talking about the night too. But I know
Yeah.
there was Lieutenant Bill Harden. He's over at Community Services.
Right.
And
1 second. Come here, darling.
I
Isn't she beautiful?
Good evening.
and Officer Rose is the one that goes to
Okay. Yeah, I
He
met.
rolls on those. He was in there. Right. They go through the Capitol Park and see nothing tell you.
Cool. So just there in front of the station, or what's the plan on that? Maybe. Okay. I can see that maybe. But I mean, schools are going to already have benches and things like that, so I don't know if it'll have as much of an impact at a school. I feel like you're wanting these in places where people are prone to be struggling and needing help, right?
Yeah.
And feeling alone.
Everywhere. Yeah. Primarily. Wherever they want to put it, they get it.
Right?
Also, I mean, who's behind you? Hope campus wants one.
Right? That makes total sense.
Make it away.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to think about locations while I'm driving around now. If I think of some, I will let you know. But I feel like downtown area is where these are really going to shine.
Yeah.
And then maybe some residential neighborhoods, maybe down 6th Street, some of those. I think that might not be a bad spot as well.
All right, cool.
It's good to see you, man.
Thank you, Chief.
Good evening. Thank you so much, Nelda. I appreciate you so much. I know her hair is amazing. Look at that. Look at that amazing hair.
It's a mess.
It's beautiful. We're not campaigning. We're just here at the city council meeting to see how they spend our money. There's going to be a lot out on the consent decree today, which is probably one of the most economically impactful things in Fort Smith that nobody knows about. So this is the kind of meeting that lots and lots of our money can be spent without even our consent on it, which is ironic that it be called a consent decree. But we're going to see how it happens. We're going to see how it happens in just a little bit. And if you think $10 million for water slides is a ripoff for taxpayers, what happens tonight could dwarf that to 100-fold. It could absolutely impact that so much more.
You went from 1 to 2 phones?
Yeah, well, I'm running on more than one social media today. I've been having people asking about it on my other ones, so it's like, okay, I'll end up with the third one in here before too long up top. That's what that's for. But we'll find out. Darling?
All right.
Hi. Okay, so let's, we're getting very close to being ready for us to go here. We get the cameras set up for the meeting to start. Just get the zoom in. Let's get the zoom in going. I think they're going to call the meeting to order very soon. And that's our current mayor, George McGill.
Good evening and welcome to the Fourth Visiting Board of Directors Study Session, February 24th of 2026. These meetings are being televised live for the benefit of our residents who can't be with us in person. This time we go right to the agenda for Director Christina Savage.
You want me to kick it off? So doing our proposed consent decree modification. Jeff, I'm wondering why this is brought to us today when the AG's office has not had time to review it.
They have reviewed it. It got back to the Department of Justice late last week, and they sent it to us on Friday. We got it from the attorney at the Department of Justice through Mr. Calamy.
Okay, because it sounded like in some of the reporting I read that they were still reviewing it at the AG's office.
And they may still have comments to make to it, but I believe that they have at least informed the Department of Justice that they were finished with review and it was appropriate to send to us.
So what I'm wondering and what I want some clarity on is when I talked to ADEQ, did we satisfy the conditions required under Article 9 to obtain the 5-year extension? Because when I spoke with ADEQ, they said there were some necessary steps the city was supposed to take that we never did. So do we have a formal court order modifying the decree to 2032?
We do not, and that's part of the discussion that's centered around the modification, and Mr. Calamita, I think, will address that, but I think that Judge Holmes had at one point indicated that he believed that we did satisfy the requirements to trigger the 5-year extension. It has never been formalized until, this is the first formal approach towards modification through the court order.
Because my understanding, and I remember Director Morton spoke about this a lot when he was on the board, was that we had been given 5 years, but they never adjusted the schedule, they never adjusted the timeline. So I was under the impression we had that 5-year extension. I'm wondering if anyone else on the board was under that impression as well.
I knew that the DOJ said, or the judge said yes, but I knew it wasn't finalized, and so we were still in the old 12-year number.
That's correct.
Okay, so on the the changes to Article 9, the new language, I'll tell you what concerns me is the new language that says defendant's failure to provide adequate funding shall not be a defense to any failure to comply with this agreement and order. And then you go on to the next paragraph, 59, it sets the 3.5 yearly increase as a baseline. That's not a cap. They're asking us to use our taxing authority, rate increases. You know, I think we need to preserve some mechanism for schedule reconsideration based on financial circumstances. We don't know what the next decade is going to hold. So that's something of concern to me. And let's see, you know, we're losing our ability to negotiate based on one extension. So when I look at it, we're paying outside counsel $800 an hour. We're in a different regulatory climate than when we entered into this decree. We have an administration that seems to be friendly. There's scaling back aggressive enforcement in other contexts. So I'm wondering, is this really the best deal we can get? Because I feel like we're caught with a false choice here. We're not close to completing the work. We need more time, but our residents can't bear the burden of these increases. I'm wondering what is someone's bill gonna look like in 2030 or 2035?
Well, I think a portion of that, the language that's included in the modification indicates that, rates are part of that structure, but any other revenues that we might identify to go towards those improvements can be contributed as well, but not require those rate increases. And I think that language was intentionally included.
Okay, I'll yield my time. I just, when I had listened to the new EPA Director Zeldin speak last year at a conference I was at, he spoke and he spoke so passionately about cooperative federalism. And when I looked through this agreement, when I talked to our officials at the state, I thought what we were moving towards was for the state to have more authority, and it seems like we're giving up a lot just for this time extension.
Well, I think there still is advocacy for a state role, an increased state role in enforcement of consent decree matters, but that is I think we're still at the front end of those discussions, and I know that Mr. Calamita is familiar with that type of discussion, and maybe can comment on that.
As it seems to me right now, it seems like if we sign this, we lose all leverage we have, and based on the language that's in here. It says defendant's failure to provide adequate funding shall not be a defense to any failure to comply with this agreement and order. I find that concerning. Mr. Calamita, can you speak to that?
Yes, good evening, everybody. Mayor McGill, members of the board, Paul Calamita with Aqualaw, excuse me. And I have the privilege of being the big face on the wall, which is never a good thing. But Director Katsavas, a couple of things. One, my billable rate is a lot lower than you have suggested, unfortunately. Two, the language that you're concerned about, I don't like either, but it is in every single federal consent decree that's out there, and that's hundreds and hundreds of them. It was in the previous one. That is the same language from the previous one, and that is not the hill to die on when we have been in non-compliance, largely through no fault of our own. We've been paddling as fast as anybody could expect us to paddle. But in my judgment, we've got a very good modification that would put us back into full compliance, and that language, that boilerplate language, which even the Trump DOJ continues to impose every day in new consent decrees, is not the hill for us to die on in the circumstances that we're in. But I share your concern. We still have an opportunity for a modification, a unilateral modification of the consent decree if we really did run into significant financial or other force majeure type events.
Well, I referenced $800 an hour because I believe that's what we appropriated. Is that not correct? For Aqualaw, $800 an hour?
No, ma'am.
We approved a contract with them for up to an amount. I don't remember what the.
I think it was $800 an hour, if my notes are correct. When I talk to officials at the state level, it seems like they really believe in us, they are really advocating for us. And what was communicated to me was it seemed like the DOJ was a bit inflexible. That's why I would like to see more enforcement, more authority placed with the state.
If I may, the State Attorney General's office has signed off on this version as that's been relayed to us by attorneys from ADEQ and the DOJ. So they both represented that the state is good with this. Under the Trump 2 administration, because they reduced Department of Justice staff, EPA staff, and they really believe in cooperative federalism, there is an opportunity to move these consent decrees from the federal government and federal court to a state order or state consent decree. But there are 3 conditions precedent. The first is that you have funding, which we now have. The second is that the state is willing to take on that burden, which we think they are. The third is you have to have demonstrated durable compliance, so some period of compliance. And that's where I think we're currently lacking, again, through no fault of our own. So I see this modification as the last step here, and that in the next year or 2, hopefully if the state of Arkansas remains willing, that we can then transfer this to a state enforcement mechanism, which would be much more flexible for this type of citywide long-term construction project. I think it's much more appropriate to be at with the state, and that the Department of Justice and US EPA are going to be significantly less able to manage the day-to-day and month-to-month implementation of these programs. So I think it'll make sense, but we need to establish that durable compliance to have that opportunity.
See, what I was told was that the DOJ is only looking at our reported SSOs. They're not looking at the other progress we're making. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, they are. The Department of Justice views these consent decrees as being sacrosanct, and any kind of non-compliance is a concern. I don't feel they've properly given us credit for the efforts that you all have made, and that's not unusual. They are not easily impressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Director, did you have any comment? Director Neil Arnold.
So one of the biggest concerns that I had with this is the stipulated penalties. And let's talk a little bit about that, Mr. Calamita. So in some instances, there have been stipulated penalties assessed against the city of Fort Smith, of which we've paid. But there are also potential stipulated penalties that are out there that feel like a weight over our heads. First off, can I ask this question? How were we assessed stipulated penalties in some instances, but not in this broad, I'm hearing, $15, $25 million in stipulated penalties. It's kind of hanging over our heads. But we've paid a couple million in stipulated penalties. Hey, number one, why? Why were those penalties assessed? And then, well, first, just let's start with that.
So every federal consent decree has stipulated penalties. That's one big difference between federal and state enforcement. We have paid stipulated penalties in the past for a subset of the sewer overflows that have occurred. We have not paid any stipulated penalties for being late. Part of that is because of Judge Holmes' 5 years. Part of that is because of force majeure circumstances like COVID and floods. So far, the only stipulated penalties we have paid has been for a subset, I would say half or less of the overflows that have occurred. And part of that is because some of those overflows occurred during force majeure events like the floods. Some were because the Sunnymead storage basin, your largest storage basin, was out of service because of the floods for almost a year. So the agencies recognized they couldn't fine us for all, and so we paid for a subset. And part of our thinking on that was to get that issue out of the way so that we can move to the CD modification, which we desperately need because we are out of compliance. We need this modification so that we get back into full compliance, hopefully for the indefinite future. And then that's a much different footing to have stipulated penalty discussions. We've also, under Trump 1, had some stipulated penalty demands withdrawn. In an ideal world, seeing how hard you've worked, and in particular, how you are now going to be able to front load a lot of the remaining work through the sales and use tax and the bonding of that. My hope is that the agencies will recognize those commitments, defer any decision on stipulated penalties, and if we can stay in compliance for a year or two, maybe let any stipulated penalties go. Stipulated penalties are to change behavior, right? When you get a speeding ticket, it's to slow you down. We have been paddling as fast as we can on this program, so I don't believe stipulated penalties serve any public purpose, and I would like to see the agencies withdraw them.
So if we were to sign this agreement, does that bind our hands or tie our hands in being able to go back and talk about these? I mean, to me, one of the frustrations about this consent decree, just in the first place, I was not on the board at the time, is we signed it, and now we have to deal with it, right? So whatever the decisions that were made at the time, they are what they are, but we're in it now. So my concern is, if we sign this, we're in it now, and the federal government can just say, they could assess those stipulated penalties, and we've got no recourse because we signed it. We agreed to it.
Right. Well, there are already stipulated penalties in what you agreed to. They're really no different than in the modification. The way to look at this, though, is you desperately need this modification. With the modification, you get back into full compliance. This is not the time to have a fight with them about stipulated penalties. And we've set this up so that you get your modification first. And then if the federal government still thinks we need stipulated penalties, if they're modest and you're willing to pay them to move on, great. If their stipulated penalties are unreasonable, you have every opportunity to challenge them and bring our case before Judge Holmes that we don't think they're appropriate. I will tell you, a lot of utilities pay stipulated penalties. Many of my clients, for some reason, don't. They're not assessed. There are many utilities around you who have not paid any stipulated penalties. So there's been inconsistent application of them. But you desperately need this modification to get back into compliance.
Sure. Because they concern me so much, I just have a couple questions. Can you pay stipulated penalties from the bond proceeds that we have, the citizens authorized? So you're shaking your head no. So that would mean that those stipulated penalties would have to come from somewhere else. So if
from rate revenue, general fund, wherever, usually rate revenue.
Okay. So if the federal government were to come back and say, we're going to assess $25 million in stipulated penalties, and I guess you're shaking your head being like, that doesn't, but if they were, they would have to come out of rates or general fund or something like that. Okay. One thing I wanted to look at and say, I was hopeful that there would be a desire to say that, okay, the city of Fort Smith has this sales tax 1% for 30 years, that, okay, they've got the money, so they can pay this $25 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there is no circumstances we are agreeing to pay anything close. I'm not even thinking about 10% of that number. I think you would be compelled to fight that before Judge Holmes. And my sense is the Trump administration, the political leadership would understand fast you've been paddling, how hard you've been doing this, how high the hill remains, and that finding you is counterproductive at this time.
Is there, so I have seen some language in here that talks about our ability to contest certain things. And maybe you might help me clarify, that for me, but are there easier mechanisms in this modification to be able to go and challenge stipulated penalties like we're talking about?
Yes, well, first of all, what happened was the federal government has not assessed, or more specifically, demanded any further stipulated penalties from you. What they have done is they have rattled the saber by sending us a letter to try to motivate us to come to a modification agreement on their terms. They sent you a letter saying, hey, we could demand this level of stipulated penalties. They have not sent a demand, so that's number one. Number two, the current consent decree has a fatal defect in that the dispute resolution process does not have a shot clock on the agencies when we get to formal dispute resolution. And so we can't, there's not a process to get to Judge Holmes if we have a beef with the agencies over the consent decree. And when we're a non-compliant, or let's say stipulated penalties, they demand stipulated penalties, we don't pay them. Well, every day we don't pay them, there's a penalty for that. And they can prevent us from getting to the judge. So this modification over their stringent objection, I mean, I was offended that's just unfair. All the other consent decrees have a very clear period where we send them a note of dispute, they have a period of time to respond, and then if we don't agree, we get to go to Judge Holmes. Well, this is the only consent decree that didn't have a deadline on them, and they didn't want to change that, but at the very end, they understood that was a non-starter for us, and they did change it so they have a shot clock, and if they impose stipulated penalties, we now have a direct path to Judge Holmes if you elect to take it.
Okay. And I'll let the rest of my board members talk through this, but so if we sign this modification, day one, we are back in full compliance. That's not good. No, hold on, you froze right there, so you kept us on bated breath, so start over.
Sure, well, let me say that we think this is a fair schedule. Normally when a modification like this is done, you get a schedule that gives you one nostril above water, because you're behind, you're a bad actor, and that's how we started with the 5 years, right? The 5 years was not enough. The reason we never got to 5 years was EPA said, okay, Judge Holmes is going to give you 5 years, give a schedule for the work to get it done and not 12. They're now giving us an additional 11 and a half, which is validation of everybody agreeing that 5 years wasn't enough. But because we wouldn't waste those engineering dollars to give them a 5-year schedule that we knew we couldn't meet, we never officially got the 5 years. And it was unfair of DOJ to put us in that position. But the 11 and a half year schedule, we believe, based on what we know now, is a reasonable schedule that gives us a good chance of being successful.
Okay, I'll let others speak.
Director Rigo.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to Mr. Calamita, Mr. Dingman, Mr. McAvoy, anyone who worked hard on this at the city level, at the state level, at the federal level. I know the relationship has improved substantially because of work put in by some of the gentlemen that I named. Mr. Canfield, your team. This is a good thing that I appreciate seeing and actually having concrete, in our hands. because I think it's just important to remember that the actual deadline that's in force now is January the 1st of 2027, correct? So, you know, just a thing to consider. I don't personally see where a lot of leverage, if you will, when you have a deadline of that nature rapidly approaching, which also happens to coincide with the new terms of office for folks that are running for office. I think it's very important that we address this in this concrete way that you provided with us. And I just have a question from your expertise. How likely, Mr. Calamita, would it be for the DOJ to reduce or modify or bring down that stipulated penalty number if we were not to accept this 11.5-year agreement that's in front of us today?
If you, I think you will really, if I were the DOJ and you didn't take this deal, which they don't like, by the way, you know, once they have a bargain, their bargain was January 1, 27. Once they have their bargain, they never want to give anything away. Right now they're given 11.5 more years on top of the bargain that one of their colleagues already negotiated. If you don't take this deal, they're going to feel like they need to get your attention. Even under the Trump administration, you know, there's some regulatory relief, but there's a lot of talk about it, but there's a lot of things the Trump administration is sticking to, like PFAS, like MCLs for drinking water, and hazardous waste designations for PFAS. There's a lot of things on the water side that there's been zero regulatory relief from the Biden administration. And I will say, if I were the DOJ, I think they would definitely hit you with a significant stipulated penalty demand to get your attention. They would feel like this was a very reasonable deal, modification, you've been in non-compliance, this gives you a clean slate, and if you don't take this, if I were them, I would more than rattle the saber, I would get your attention.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that perspective with us. And again, to anyone listening, anyone watching that was involved in this very complex, multi-year bit of business on either side of the agenda, I know that from my perspective as 1/7 up here, I'm very, very grateful for the work that was put in and the desire to work with us in a way that brings some progress and brings us closer to doing this very, very important engineering work that we need to do. Because underneath it all, underneath all the conversations about timing and money and all these sorts of things, we have a system that we're fixing and improving in the course of this work, and that is a very, very good thing for the residents of our community. You want clean water to come in to your house so you can use it, and you want that water, once you've used it and once it's dirty, you want it to go away the way that it should. And so as a part-time member of a legislative body, a part-time politician, I'm grateful very much to the full-time folks who have worked to the bone to get us to this point. So thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to Director Kemp and then Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this is great, and I appreciate the work of Mr. Calamita and all those that have been involved. I do wish we had gotten here sooner. It does seem like this has taken a long time. It then brings a lot of Pandora moments about, well, is this everything we should have gotten? Is there something left on the table? And I think it allows us this. I think one of the things I like about this is the shot clock, how it will improve the dispute resolution process. And I just want to follow up with that. By agreeing to this modification, we still retain the right for viable and prudent disputes that may come along the way of the journey, correct?
Absolutely. The major benefits are the additional time, which we obviously needed. Also, this modification gives Jeff and Lance and their team much more flexibility to prioritize the work that delivers the greatest benefits up front for the citizens, which was very important to us in actually reducing sewer overflows. So we're not anticipating a lot of disputes, But we desperately needed that shot clock on EPA so that we had an ability to get to the judge. And for reasons I don't understand, we had pointed that out to the judge in a previous dispute, and he didn't seem concerned about it. He basically said, well, that was the bargain that you negotiated and wasn't going to change the contract, even though I really feel it was an oversight and quite frankly unfair by DOJ to not have corrected that, and they have finally grudgingly corrected it. I will say that was a non-starter for me. If they didn't change that, I would tell you don't sign this, just in case we run into trouble, but we don't expect to. We think it's a fair modification.
So is it fair to say that this allows a process now for disputes to be processed in a way where the other party has a timeline to get back? Okay.
That's right. They have to put their position in writing and be prepared to defend that before Judge Holmes, whereas previously they could sit on their hands while our non-compliance increased every day. So it made it almost impossible for us to really pursue dispute resolution because the financial liability just kept increasing as they prevented us from getting to the judge every day.
And I liked the other thing, the second thing I liked about it was how it allows greater engineering flexibility. Instead of those rigid quotas yearly, allowing it to be look out and spread, knowing that there are progress and projects that are going to be underway and will bring a great residual, and we may catch up on year 2.5 versus meeting that on year 1. And I like the idea of securing in 11.5 years. I think that is important for us. I did not see Mr. Todd here tonight, but I do have a question for administration. Just an update on us looking at the consent decree consulting, that we were looking at. Is there an update on that process and where staff is to secure? Because I think about a project this size, and I come back to Director Rigo's comments. I mean, we are a part-time litigating body that does not do consent decree work. Have we made progress in identifying some services that can bring in the consulting that we need?
We are going through the request for proposals process. In terms of the timeline for that, I don't have that committed, those dates committed to memory, but that is in process.
I think the thing I want to reiterate here is, do we have the internal staffing, contractor capacity, and project management structure to really deliver on the 2038 schedule? Because I already feel this opportunity almost where we get this and we breathe because we go, oh, we got it, and it's great, and then we kind of let up for a minute, and I would like to lean into this full force, production ahead, and if we could be done by year 9, year 9.5, I'd love to not get to year 11. I'd love to see us, if we have the funding mechanism, we bring the consulting, and we take along the way, and then my understanding, which is why I'm asking these questions, is if we run into something that would lead to a change order of process, then we have an opportunity to go back, being in compliance, and seeing that there's a process of unforeseen things that can be disputed. So that's my comment.
No, I would say from the staff's perspective, there is no resting of the laurels. There will be, we do intend to lean into it, as you say, and continue the work to be done.
Well, I know that we're going to want to hear from other colleagues, but I myself would like to see this on the agenda, and I'd like to move forward. Thank you.
Director Good.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Director Kendall, I really enjoyed your conversation, the comments. Director Rigo, thank you. I want to follow suit with you. I just really wanted to say thank you. This has been a team effort from the beginning, so I want to thank the administration, Aqua Law, and others. But particularly I want to thank Lance McAvoy for his knowledge, processes and systems, and all the people involved in helping us get here. Ms. Calamita, I do have a question before I go along with my thanks. Because we know that relationships matter, particularly in situations like this and anything political, do you think that our relationship has improved with AEQ?
Yes, I think the state has understood just how hard you all have worked, and I know Lance in particular has extensively work with the state to make sure that they're satisfied with the progress and the priorities. While we're out of compliance, we're still trying to spend every dollar wisely. So I think the entire relationship with the state, largely due to Lance's efforts, I think is excellent. I think our relationship with EPA and DOJ has improved, principally because of the board's action. The DOJ wanted to accelerate some of the sewer overflow control work as opposed to putting most of it at the back of the schedule. And your financial management plan that the board came up with and adopted that allowed the bonding of the sales and use tax and the first $100 million that I think has been issued. So we're not resting on our laurels. There's no break. You guys have already, I think, put $100 million out. That was the watershed act that led to this modification. The agencies kind of nodded and said, okay, you guys get it, you found a way. And so the credit really goes to the board. Also, Mayor McGill has come with us on several meetings with the agencies, which I think he would have rather got a root canal given the grimace on the way out the door. But he has shown up and taken some arrows for the whole board without complaint.
Yeah, I agree, and thank you for your comments. I did also want to thank Mayor McGill for his efforts as well. I remember sitting on my very first conversation, the meeting that we had, the conference call, and how vocal you were in making sure the state knew our position. But also want to thank State Representative Jay Richardson for his efforts in assisting us with our CD to get more time. We do know, again, I'll say relationships matter. These folks, like many others, have, even like Director Christina Gonzalez, have taken it upon themselves to actually talk to individuals about where we are and about our concerns. So for our decision making comes from the professionalism and knowledge of staff as directed as well, where staff and administration as well as the mayor on how we should move forward. So I just want to thank everyone for helping us get to where we are now, and I think we need to move forward.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I just jump in quick with one more thanks for name checks for people? And the comment was brought up about from Mr. Calmeida about the criticality of that financial plan. Former Director Levon Moore, thank you, sir, for the hard work you put in on that and the expertise you brought to bear on that.
Thank you. Director Christina Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Paul. Thanks to the team. I got a couple of questions. So, Paul, is there any provision in here that allows if a project is way over costing, let's say an engineering estimate for a project is $5 million, and all of a sudden the bids come in at $10 to $15 million. Is there something that says, hey, well, projects are 2 times or 3 times the engineering estimates, and then we run out of money? Is there any provisions that allow us to say, hey, let's pause, what's going on, figure out what we need to do next?
Yeah, really 2 opportunities, because that happens all the time. It's happening less, which is really nice, but every once in a while you get a project that you thought was $2 million, and for some unique reasons you get a bid that's 8. And the agencies don't want you to do that project either. If there's another way to achieve the same system benefit, let's say for $3 million, right? They don't want you to spend 8 for the project you identified a few years ago when new engineering, new information could lead you to a $3 million solution instead of the 8. So generally the agencies are very good about allowing those kinds of trade-offs. But if they didn't, if for some reason they foolishly wanted you to waste the money and do it the hard way, the non-cost effective way, you could file a dispute resolution and take that to Judge Holmes. And I think Judge Holmes would probably glare at somebody and say, I really don't think this matter should be before me, Mr. Agency. And they would get the message and probably not require the judge to write an opinion that said that.
Okay, my next question is, at the beginning of this document, it talks about the Clean Water Act. And there was a Supreme Court decision last year, the year before, that says agencies no longer have the right to govern. That has to be done by Congress. So my question is, if Congress changes the Clean Water Act, either make it harder or make it softer, are we saying the Clean Water Act as of today is what we're following, and if it changes, we still follow this Clean Water Act, or do we change, or we follow any potential future Clean Water Act changes that might occur by Congress?
The Clean Water Act prohibits raw sewage discharges. I don't see that change,
I
you know,
understand
that's
that,
really.
but if they make it stringent to where you have to meet such affluent numbers or something that causes discharge or something like that, does that make it, let's say, it would raise our consent decree by 30%, I'm making some number up, please,
Yeah.
don't quote me anybody on the internet. Are we gonna be bound by the Clean Water Act as today, or any future changes the Clean Water Act by Congress could do?
The short answer is if there's a future change, particularly one that's beneficial to you, that let's say gave you some more flexibility. So for example, integrated planning is in the Clean Water Act, and it allows communities like Fort Smith to prioritize stormwater, wastewater, biosolids, a reuse of effluent. It allows them to prioritize. So if, let's say you had a significant stormwater issue, you had flooding in part of your town, and you wanted to deal with that before some of the consent decree projects, you have a right under the Clean Water Act to propose that to the agencies. And so if that language in the Clean Water Act were expanded, for example, to include drinking water considerations, because I know you have a lot of drinking water spending, you would have that benefit under this consent decree. You could say to the agencies, the Clean Water Act has changed. Congress has now said I get to add in my drinking water in the prioritization, and that means I want to change some of the consent decree schedules. You would have, right now under the Clean Water Act, you have that opportunity. But yes, so if there is a change to the Clean Water Act that's beneficial, my expectation is that the agencies would allow you to, they would work with you. And if they didn't, you have your opportunity to go to Judge Holmes and ask him to allow them to follow the updated law. But what you're doing here is signing a contract. So you don't automatically get it, but in practice, the agent, if Congress has, on a bipartisan basis, which they have to, has made a change, it's going to be hard for them not to give you the benefit. And the last thing I'll say is your congressional delegation has been really good. They've been concerned about this. They know it affects every citizen, and in particular Congressman Womack, because of his position on appropriations, Senator Bozeman have both been the tip of the spear for you folks in trying to get the attention of the federal agencies that you are paddling as fast as you can. We couldn't do it by January 1, 27. So the whole delegation has participated, but those two, particularly Congressman Womack, has really rolled up his sleeves and banged his head against the wall a little bit to your benefit.
I agree with Congressman Womack, he's done a good job. I asked the question about the Clean Water Act because it really leads me into the Waters of the United States rule. And so because the Waters of the United States rule was ambiguously and it was interpreted by federal agencies, and now because Congress says you can't do that, well, what changes would occur when the Waters of the United States rule is kind of revamped and reworded to where it's not as stringent as today? Because I think that's where Congress is going to go with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't have any application here because what we're talking about is discharges of untreated sewage to surface waters. And
yeah, but the Waters of the United States rule is inside the consent decree. If you read it, it's in there multiple times. So how does that change the consent decree? Modification, I fully am on board. I just want to know how that Waters of the United States rule would change the language in the consent decree that we currently have.
Okay. Very marginally, the Waters of the United States really defines kind of questionable dry areas, ephemeral streams, and we're really talking about sewer overflows that are reaching surface waters that are unquestionably, even under the wildest Trump definition, they're going to be waters of the United States. So it may help us on discharges that don't reach surface waters, like a basement backup or an overflow to the Walmart parking lot, but it's not gonna, you don't want sewage in your streams, right? You don't clean.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I got two other questions. What happens if we do get congressional spending directed to the city? Let's say Congress allocates, because they're trying to help with consent decrees. I'll use my example in a second. They give us let's say $20 million for 20 years. Does that change our timeline at all if we get congressional directed spending to help resolve the consent decree?
No, that's the great part of the deal we negotiated. If you do get some outside help, you still have the full additional 11 and a half years. And more time is always good because, you know, you don't know how the community is going to develop. There's always opportunities when you do these projects to both get and give economies of scale with other things going on. So if we did get some outside dollars, it doesn't shrink the extension that you got.
I was actually.
And you could offset your rate increases.
Yeah, would it extend time? That's what I was more or less, would it, if we did get an extension of money and time by Congress, would that extend the time at all?
If Congress said, you know, everybody under a consent decree can have an additional 5 years on top of whatever schedule they have, yes, you could get that, but I don't envision that.
I do. I think there's some stuff coming. My last two questions is, part of our consent decree says modification says we gotta do 40,000 linear feet a year. Is that work done or work under contract? And my question is, what happens if the contract gets behind, or are we gonna be deemed because somebody got behind that? So is it work under, issued out for contract, or is it work completed?
Yeah, good question. It's work completed, and what we did was, I think it was Director Rigo mentioned that he liked that we could average over a 3-year period. Because what happens is sometimes, let's say you get several floods in 1 year, your teams might be otherwise occupied and you might not hit. The real average is like 50,000. So we backed it down so that you could have a bad year, or you could have a year where you mobilize a contractor, you really get a lot of work done, knowing that you're going to do less the following year. So it gave you more flexibility and hopefully the ability to do it cheaper by having an average of 3-year approach.
Is there
and you could have sort of force majeure. If something happened and you didn't make the 40 through no fault of your own, like let's say you didn't get any bids, right? You put it out, but nobody bids. You could assert a force majeure, and in that circumstance, I'm almost positive you'd get relief.
Is the last consent decree had a reopener, like at year 6, 20% median household income, open a reopener. Is there any type of reopener with extension that allows both the state and the federal and us to reopen it and do X, Y, Z?
You know, there isn't, and the 2.5% was catastrophic for you. It was disastrous because nobody's rates, sewer rates, are 2.5% of their median household income, actually. So it really was way too high. You're probably between 1 and 1.75 at most. There is no formal reopener, but there is a modification provision as well as a force majeure provision. So if we got some kind of surprise, or we had a big flood or a tornado, you know, there are mechanisms within the consent decree to give you relief for not being able to meet the time frames through reasons that are beyond your control.
Okay, the last comment I have is, I just hope that I think you can do a question and realizes that we've done everything we can. And we recently, with the DC spill of 200 million gallons being down.
Say that again.
Thank you. I'll restrict that. So hopefully everybody's watching from DOJ, EPA. Everybody knows DC just had a 200 million gallon sewage spill in the Potomac. And it's still going on today. And so I hope that any type of penalties in the past will go away and we can start fresh. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll go to Director Christine, Ms. Savage, Director Rigo, and then George.
Well, I was gonna talk about that 2.5% of median household income. You know, we're deleting Article 9. We lose that ability to file that updated financial capability analysis. Should we not retain some sort of mechanism like that if we need it? Because I think about the cost of goods is going up, interest rates fluctuate, our revenues fluctuate. I'm worried this new agreement feels more restrictive. And I would say, no one here is against clean water. I would not consider myself a part-time politician. I would say I'm a full-time public servant. So I just want to make sure we get this right. I'm happy that we've been given this extra time, but I want to make sure that this new agreement isn't so restrictive, because my understanding was when you sign a contract, it's legally binding. So I just want to make sure we get it right before we enter into another agreement that, it outlines 3.5% increase as your baseline. That's not a cap. It seems like there is no cap, right, under this agreement? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, so two separate questions. The first is, the original agreement said only when your sewer rates are 2.5% of median household income can you get an extension, and that extension is no more than 5 years. It set a very high bar that you're never going to reach going forward. Your sewer rates will never be 2.5%. 2% would be tough. So I'm happy that that provision has gone away, and now you have a consent decree that's consistent with just about everybody else that allows you to propose modifications and to seek judicial review if the agencies don't give you a modification. So that's number one. And then the 3.5% of rates is a minimum. Based on your financial planning, we don't think you're going to have to go above the 3.5% because of what you and the citizens have done on the sales and use tax, which is a really smart way. It's the most cost-effective way for people to fund this program. But the 3.5%, if we do get much higher costs and the agencies don't give you additional time, you will have to raise rates above 3.5%. But based on what we know now, we don't think that's the case, and we're hoping inflation is reducing going forward.
So what if modeling standards change and reveal additional deficiencies, and we have more work that's piled onto us in this same time frame? I mean, that's a concern. What would rates look like then? That's one of the things I'm worried about.
Right. So the strategy is, once we get this modification, to have a couple of good years where we meet all our deadlines. In fact, we get ahead of the deadlines. And so effectively we're banking a few days so that if we get some surprises, we go back to EPA on a much different footing, a footing of full compliance. And it makes it easier for them to work with us and give us additional time because there's additional work. So that would be my expectation. They would work with you. If they don't, then you have the opportunity to declare a force majeure. Director Settle said, if a $2 million project becomes an $8 million project, I think that's a force majeure event. And I think Judge Holmes would kind of look at that and say, yeah, 4 times the cost. That's not something that either party expected, that the program would be 4 times higher. So there are mechanisms in the consent decree to address financial difficulties going forward, but at the same time, the agencies don't want a paper cut. They don't want you coming to them when it gets a little difficult or the hill gets a little steeper. It's got to be a pretty significant hit for them to want to give you additional time.
Do you think the agencies have a deep understanding of these rates? The cost of this, the burden of the cost is bear by people with a median household income of under $55,000 a year. That's who bears the cost of this. Do you think they have a deep understanding of that?
They generally want to stay as far. What you should understand is when you sign this modification, which I will urge you to authorize Jeff to sign it, it will become your program and your schedule. And they will say it's up to you on how you finance it, right? They don't want to in any way have their fingerprints on however you choose to finance it. And I don't believe they really understand what it is like to be in your shoes, to have to deal with the poor, the low and fixed income folks in your community who have to bear these burdens. But that's just the way it is. We've negotiated a deal that I do believe is fair in terms of time, and it's the right technical work, because everybody agreed we didn't want sewage in our streets or on our streams. And so based on what we know now, maybe with a little margin, we think we can implement this, but if we run into trouble, you absolutely should stand up on behalf of those low and fixed income ratepayers in particular and yell to anybody who will listen.
Director Ringo?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just gonna, say the thanks that I said a few minutes ago to Director Morgan.
Okay, thank you. Director George Cassatt.
And Paul, let me ask you this 11 and a half years, how did y'all come to that amount of time?
Well, we started at Judge Holmes' 5 years, which the prior DOJ lawyer, again, didn't want to give us unless we compressed the whole program into those 5 years, which we knew we couldn't. We couldn't technically, we couldn't do the work, like we couldn't sequence the construction, and we sure didn't have the money to do that. So we started at 5 years, and we were really looking for,
Paul,
longer.
Paul, what I'm saying is, if we sign this and in 11 and a half years we're not done, what happens?
So the 11 and a half years, we didn't pull it out of the air. Lance laid out a technical program of how you would do the work. What was a pace of work that we could manage in terms of number of projects, cost of projects that our contractors at the local contracting community could manage. So there was a lot of very detailed analysis by us and the agencies about what work could be done, particularly when we got to the F-35. I'm still very jealous of the mayor's pen. He hasn't sent me one, but there are other things going on. So there's a lot of technical evaluation of what work could we deliver. And then secondly, there was a financial evaluation driven by your sales and use tax and your rate increases as to what that work would cost and what the spend would be. And that's how we ended up at 11 and a half years. The agencies would have liked 8, and the extra 3.5 years really mattered, and we were willing to stand our ground for it, and I think they recognized that we'd made a good case for that time and gave it to us.
Okay, so what have y'all come up with cost? What's a good cost after 11 and a half years? Has that been figured?
I'm gonna have to defer to Lance on that.
Well, I've heard 600 million, 700 million, 800 million, $1 billion with you factor in inflation. I'd just like to know. 800 million.
But my
So what would we
understanding,
borrow?
my understanding is that includes the 200 million already performed from all the way back to 2000.
So we're gonna be borrowing money, we're gonna be either raising rates or borrowing more money down the road.
We're gonna have to borrow another 300 million.
That's right.
Which the 1% sales tax is for 30 years to be able to,
That's right.
to allow for that. So we'll have to bond out more dollars.
Or raise rates.
Or raise rates, but bonding it out is the,
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not a huge fan of debt, but I would rather do that than raise rates.
I know. So there's no there's no telling what somebody's water bill is gonna be in 10 years, is there, a sewer bill?
Oh,
I mean, there's a lot of variables there, isn't there?
I mean, I think we're in a situation where we've got to really monitor this. The 7 of us got to really monitor it.
Yeah.
We know what it's doing to people.
Well, yeah, it's good, yeah.
You're right, and so, I think the bond dollars should complete it.
Hope so.
If we've got this engineering firm to come in to do the program management of the consent decree, I think, I said 100 million, give me $100 million, meaning save me 100 million. I don't know if that's reasonable, but, I think we've got to throw everything at it, ingenuity-wise, to keep that cost where we're at. But you're right, George. I mean, we're putting dollars to it.
Yeah.
Which is ultimately what it needs. And, I mean, I don't know what 10 years is gonna look like from now. I really don't.
Kind of scary, really.
It really is. I agree with you.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions from the board?
I'd like to make a motion that we put this on the next regular meeting.
Second. Thank you.
If you'll all excuse me, I'm not feeling well, so I'm gonna send myself home. Thank you.
We'll go to item number 2.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, item 2 this evening is a discussion regarding possible reinstatement of mosquito fogging operations by the Public Works Department. The city performed this function for many years, but discontinued the program in 2025 due to budgetary considerations at the time. Over the years, there's been discussion on both sides of this issue. Some residents favor the program for control of nuisance and potential disease-carrying mosquitoes, while others contend that the chemicals used have detrimental effects on residents, pets, pollinators, or the environment in general. Board members have recently received feedback from residents regarding discontinuing the program and requested the study session discussion. At this point, I'll introduce Matt Meeker, Director of Public Works, for any additional comments before turning to the board's discussion. Mr. Meeker?
I'm just here to help facilitate the discussion and answer any questions you have, or, whatever the board decides, we're willing to do that, so.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Director Rigo. Thank you, Mayor. And Matt, I do want to say, and I hope my colleagues got a chance to read it, I do appreciate the additional contextual information that was provided, facts, figures, feedback, statistics, etc. So just as grist for the mill of the discussion, and I know very much so that this was something that was discontinued by a 4-2 to 1 abstention vote 10 months ago. I was in the 2 that was against, but I just, I appreciated Director George Katsavas mentioning it the other day and us having the opportunity to have a conversation about it again. Because I'll just say for context, in those last 10 months, the 2 things that I have heard absolutely positively the most feedback about were bringing the spay and neuter ordinance work back, which we did last week. And number 2, and not too far behind, is some version of what the heck happened, where'd the mosquito spray go, the mosquitoes are worse than they've ever been, we need to talk about bringing this back again. So I understand that it's a decision that we'll make, and that good people have different opinions on this topic. I think it's something we should seriously consider bringing back, even if it's just in a more targeted or opt-in basis. I think unilaterally sort of disarming the fight that we had since we landed on the moon against the mosquitoes, I don't think that's sustainable moving forward. And I do want to point out from the statistics in the very thorough email that Matt sent us that in the Lucity system, since 2019, the comments and the things that he's heard back were 36 requests to stop spraying, but 372 requests for spraying in specific areas. So again, I understand and appreciate folks have differences on this, and good folks have honest disagreements about it, and that's okay. I just think we really, truly can't completely abandon trying to do something meaningful to address the mosquito population. Thank you. Thank you. Director George Katsavas.
Okay, man, what,
I can't tell.
It's pretty close.
So Director Rigo mentioned targeted areas.
I'm sorry, what's
He mentioned targeted areas for spraying. What areas would that be to you? Targeted areas around the river?
Well, I think what it was referring to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was the areas where we had requests from individuals. And so it was individuals that had called in and requested us to spray.
Right.
But Matt, I think to the Director George's question, if I may, could you articulate sort of what the zones or what the policy was before it was discontinued? Is that what you're asking, George?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we had.
We were doing citywide spraying at one time, right?
Yes, yeah, we had, 5 separate zones,
Yeah.
and then we sprayed them twice a week.
Yeah.
And we had the schedule, I sent out to y'all with the maps and everything,
Right.
the schedule. And so when we had 2 trucks available, but we haven't had since July 21, we've not been able to fill 2 positions, we've only been able to fill 1. Of course, they're seasonal positions, it's just we don't get a lot of interest in those positions.
So from 21 to 25, there was a single spraying truck rather than 2.
Correct. It's just because we couldn't get another person to fill that second position.
So if somebody calls in and say, I live at Hillcrest and we got a mosquito problem, you'll spray that area?
Not anymore, right?
Well, not anymore, yeah, I know, but I mean,
We did, and we ran a regular schedule, and if we had an area where we had, where we were seeing a lot of significant complaints, or a number of complaints, we might go out and say, hey, on this night, go ahead and hit this here, but we can't do that a bunch, because you don't want it, and we mix, as I saw in an email, looking at that, we mix fairly weak, just for the standpoint, so we don't overdose an area.
Right. Okay. You know, I really don't have a problem with that targeted spraying at all. Well, it's up to the rest of the board, I don't know what they want to do, what your thoughts are. All right, Andrew.
I think Director Kemp was next in the queue. Did you want to make some comments, Director?
Just a simple comment.
Okay, Director Kemp, you recognize.
I'll defer to Director. Go ahead.
Just wanted to, I guess kind of answer, Director George's sentence, I'm absolutely bringing this back, being one of the two votes that want to keep it in the first place.
Okay.
Matt, my question, thank you for your time, appreciate you and your department, what y'all are doing. Just confirming, I already checked on this, but I just think it's worth asking. You're able to reinstate this and maintain a balanced budget for your department, correct?
Yeah, and we already had some funds budgeted for it, and we've still got chemical left over. And I mean, it's still good, it hasn't gone bad, we've still got chemical left over, so we've got enough to get us probably through most of this season.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely need to buy some more chemical at the end of the season, so we have something to start with next year.
Yeah, and I remember my comments were, just hang on to the truck and let's see what the feedback of the community is. I know we did get quite a bit of feedback, about people wondering why we took it away, and they were saying that it wasn't even mosquitoes, it was just a whole bunch of insects that just seemed to flare up over the season. If we have another wet summer, because we also had a wet summer that we battled, do you adjust your schedule within that regard? Does the rain affect the effectiveness of it?
No, I mean, it doesn't generally affect our schedule, other than, like I said, if we get a lot of calls, and, or several calls in a specific area, we may try to concentrate some more spraying in a particular area if we have a really bad problem. But, honestly, going twice a week in a zone is generally sufficient.
Yeah, and then the other one was, I just saw the email, and I know none of us here are medical experts. I was just sitting here thinking about, I was unaware that there had been 21 cases reported in Sebastian County since 1999 of the West Nile virus, but there are people that go on mission trips, and I know people have compassionate causes. I mean, that's not necessarily attributing to mosquitoes per se. Do we think that was because of mosquitoes in our area?
Yes, I mean, that was, information was from the CDC, so what I took it on those is that was all, that was, from this area, and I guess back, when I had looked at some of their data, and I don't remember the year off the top of my head, there's a point there where they started testing and doing, I think, further testing on from I guess a DNA standpoint to tell like where everything's coming from, but I don't remember what year that is, so if they started that, so.
But overall, when this program was implemented, was it safe to say you have data that could say that this is effective, and that's why it stayed in existence over the years?
I don't feel like I can say whether it's necessarily effective or not.
Well, perhaps we evaluate, go forward, thank you.
Director Neil Martin.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, do we have any data that shows that this is effective? And I don't think there is, you just said it. I spoke to an infectious disease doctor, in the area, and just quoting him, I don't know that he said he didn't know that he had seen an increase in mosquito-borne illnesses in Arkansas. With that being said, diseases spread by mosquitoes have to have very specific tests that take several days to come back and are not routinely tested in hospitals, so they don't know. Most of the time, the individual just, if they have a mosquito-borne illness, they get better, they might not even go to the doctor. So there's really no data that tells you whether we're whether we have an issue. You know, and I know that we've got people that say that they want it or not. You know, I've heard that it kills other insects, bees, those things that maybe hunt mosquitoes. You know, we put bird feeders in the backyard to attack it. But, you know, because I don't have data, because we don't have data, we don't know the effectiveness of this. If we could get it, that'd be awesome. I'd love to be able to do it, but I feel like
I don't feel like there's good data out there.
Right,
So.
right. So, I mean, we're talking $70,000. I mean, I get it. But, I was against it then, I'm still against it now. But if we could have the data, I'd sure like to be able to prove it out and say, yeah, we need to go ahead and do this. But I think there's some ancillary things, or not ancillary, there's other things that are potentially impacted by this, not just the mosquitoes. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm welcome, you know, all you guys listening and watching, send me information, I want to know that. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Right, so.
Thank you, though. One thing I've heard from my in-laws is this, you know, and so, happy wife, happy in-laws, I gotta listen to them. So, Matt, the only thing I would ask is if we do reinstate this, some of the concerns I've heard is they don't know when it's gonna happen. Is there any type of schedule we could put out that says, hey, we're gonna be in this zone on this date, kind of like the trash pickup? And so that way, if people wanna put their animals in, or they wanna take some provisions, and have kids out there, they could do that. That would be up to them to choose. I think if there's more communication, says, here's the schedule, here's what we're gonna be doing, in a non-called, hey, we got a big influx here, but this is the normal schedule we're gonna follow. I think the public would appreciate that, and that way they could, if they choose not to have the kids out when this happens, or, and I know mostly at night, but there's people that, you know, in the summer, people play till 9:30, 10 outside with kids, and they know they're gonna be spraying on next day in their area, they can, hey, let's bring the kids, if they choose to do that, or they will bring their animals in. So I would ask that if this board continues to move forward with this, which I think probably we will, you put some schedule out there and give it to the public, so that way they know what's coming, they can choose what to do during that time.
Well, and I think if we bring that back, one of the things we will be doing is one of the things changes I would want to make is run the shifts later at night. So traditionally, they always started at 7, and that's just the way it's been done. It's one of those things, it's the way we've done it for years, you know, and honestly, I mean, people were, especially in the summertime, people were still out then, and we could help eliminate a lot of conflicts, say if we moved it to 10 as the start time. So,
Would you like Sunday night through Thursday, is that what you're thinking, and then Friday, Saturday's open, or is that?
yeah, it goes Sunday through Thursday, so Friday night and Saturday night, we always take off.
So people that want to stay outside and barbecue or have
Yes.
adult beverages by the fire, they could. So I'm just trying to think. I think something like that in the schedule would probably calm a lot of concerns people have. Thank you.
Great, good.
Thanks, man, just a couple of comments. Talking about data, are we talking about the infectious disease data, or are we just talking about mosquito bites? Are we talking about people complaining about water ponding and mosquitoes, infestation? Are we talking about pets being bitten and heartworm? And what are we talking about? Because we know that all these are factors.
That's a good question. I'm with you.
Well, what I'm saying is, if we're talking about data, I mean, people's perceptions are the reality. I mean, people get mosquito bitten, dogs, pets get heartworm. I mean, we know that we are doing better with water leaks, or water leaks in the pond water. Matter of fact, ran into one the other day, it's not even a water leak, it's a part, I believe, has a sewer issue. And the water just running down the street. So, I mean, these are issues to consider when we come on spraying. So we just can't just look at data for disease, human disease.
Well, I mean, I don't know how to quantify it, I guess is the thing. The number of times I get bitten, I don't know, that's just kind of where I'm at.
The question I have, Director Mark, is why do you seek quantification for a restoration of a program, but you discontinue a program without any quantification of the good it may have been doing?
It was a money-saving opportunity. You know, we were looking at budget cuts, and that was one that there wasn't any data around it.
So it's felt to me it was an easy decision.
Thank you for that clarification.
Director Rego? Okay. Any other comments?
I think the only comment I would have is, I do want to go back and I'll just confirm it. Your department didn't necessarily need that 10% cutback to be balanced, but that you offered this up because everyone was doing it and being a team player.
That was part of it.
That was part of your, that was
part
part of how you got
that's part of
to
the cut that we were, yeah, we had to cut it, so.
because there wasn't too much to trim in your thing besides operationally that you needed.
Right, there wasn't really a big need for us to make those cuts.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to have this included for our consideration on the second voting meeting in March. I guess that's the 17th. So that way, folks can have an additional number of weeks to share your feedback with us. And please, Matt, if there's anything more, again, your email was very thorough. I encourage the folks to read it, my colleagues on the board if they haven't yet. But if there's any other additional info you'd like for us to know or be aware of, Matt, between now and the 17th, I think that would be appreciated and helpful. So that's the motion I make for the 17th.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Austin have a comment? Another question, Matt, so, while we had a email come through, a lady wanted to opt out, so for an individual to opt out, you just make a phone call?
That,
Send an
you know,
email?
that
What's the
brings,
best
that
way?
brings up an important point that I would like to ask, because one of the most difficult things for us every year on this is the people that do not want us to spray. And it always becomes an argument, and then trying to, you know, if we stop one place, I mean, we literally run into this, we got somebody here that doesn't want us to spray, but then somebody next door to us, like, I'm overrun with mosquitoes, I need to be sprayed, you know? And, then, you know, you try to stop and start, you really got to start, you know, stop like one house ahead and stop one house beyond, and people get mad because we're not spraying by them, and say, well, your neighbor wanted us to opt out. And also we learned the thing about with our drivers trying to, and that's what we tried one year, and we tried putting out signs about, you know, where to start and stop spraying, is because the driver, we couldn't keep them, they would be spraying areas all the time that weren't supposed to be spraying. We'd be getting angry phone calls, you know, you sprayed my area, I've told you 3 times not to spray, you know. I would prefer, if we were gonna go back to do this, to say, we're spraying everything. We're spraying it. You know, we're going by the street twice a week during the season. That's up to the board. If y'all want us to make exceptions and stuff and let people call in and say, I don't want to get sprayed, we'll still try to do our best on it, but we're still gonna have those types of interactions.
My simple working answer, if I may intercept on this, was if you don't do this one street, but you're doing the entire block around it, you can honestly just say, mosquitoes are going to be effectively trapped away from that street versus trying to stop and start at one house right after the other house. If the board so chooses and directs it, I don't have, I'm neutral here, but if there's one person, then just don't do the street, but if you've done all the other streets around it, I mean, we're treating mosquitoes regardless, as a working answer.
And as an interesting thought, Director Jim, the other question or clarification I had is, when the program was underway, did our parks and public spaces fell under the zones that were treated, correct? Or was it strictly residential streets?
They're in the zones, but no, we didn't normally spray those unless there was, you know, we had a request or something from like the Parks Department, said, hey, we've got a problem down here and we want to pull the parking lot and spray.
Yeah, because that's something to consider over the next few weeks as we're contemplating this, is a huge amount of the feedback I was receiving was as a result of spending a ton of time out in these public spaces where a lot of people are, coaching 2 baseball teams, being involved with soccer. You just have tons of people congregating in these spaces, getting bid up, saying, hey, you're with the city, what's going on here? They're still spraying for this stuff, are they not spraying for this stuff? They should bring that back if they're not, et cetera, et cetera. And so as we think about this, I mean, I think we need to kind of contemplate some options for at least periodic treatment of those large, this public spaces where lots of people congregate.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. And the other thing I would say, you know, in the time since we have stopped the spraying, we still have continued with Waterside pellets and such and really on publicly owned, city-owned parks and those social spaces, in addition to maybe targeting areas where we know there's going to be congregations, we also can still continue to maintain the larvicide program to try to keep it down from that side too.
Oh, certainly, I mean, my stance is not anti-larvicide or anti, I mean, this is I would say probably an all arrows in the quiver kind of a approach, you know. There's no one single thing that's gonna make the outdoor spaces more tolerable.
Thank you.
Would this be operational? Would this come out of operational budget or street fund? Okay.
We had a motion, did we get a second? Thank you. Let's go to item number 4.
I've got item number 3. Trying to get ahead of this, Mayor. I'm trying to jump. Item 3 is a review of the City of Fort Smith fiscal performance policies, which was requested by the board. These policies are codified in the Fort Smith Municipal Code in section 2-166, and a copy of this section was included in the board's agenda packet. Chief Financial Officer Andy Richards will address any questions from the board regarding these policies and also have some historical information related to the city's fund balances over the last several years. Mr. Richards.
Yeah, so part of this request from the board to review the fiscal policies was also to have an opportunity to look at historical information about the 4 operating funds. So I'll present that to you at first, so we can talk about that, but then I'll take whatever questions y'all have about the actual policies that was included in the board packet. So we went back and pulled information. I think the request is go back to 2010. So we pulled that information out of the annual audit of financial statements for the general fund and the street maintenance fund, and we're able to pull that. The working capital computations that are done for water and sewer fund and sanitation, we weren't able to get those out of the audits because of the way the presentation of those funds is different than how we budget and what we look at on a quarterly basis for the operating funds for solid waste and sanitation, or water and sewer. So that's because they follow Pool Creek County.
Okay, so lots of money got spent. Wow. The agreement that we will be accepting will spend lots of money. It seems like that's pretty much a done deal and probably a pretty good thing to be happening. And they're going to be spraying mosquitoes again, which I can say as a B&B host, we had a lot of complaints last year about mosquitoes, and it did seem like it was worse not having them taken care of through the city. So I'm glad at least we're making some headway on a couple of those issues. I'm not a big fan of spraying insecticides around, but we do live in an area that prior to spraying for insecticides and taking care of mosquitoes that way, we had problems with mosquito-borne illness that was very serious. I'm not going to have signs available yet, Shell. We don't want to do this too early. There are restrictions about when we can put signs up. The election is not until November, and putting signs up too early is not optimal. Let me bring everybody down here. We'll chat for just a couple minutes. So yeah, if we do signs too early, people will get used to seeing them, and they won't even remember seeing them anymore by the time the election rolls around. I am very excited to make some really cool signs that I think everyone will be able to enjoy and appreciate. Yeah, the mosquitoes in this region are brutal, and they are difficult to deal with on a local level. We do local methods to try to control them in our B&B, but when all the neighbors around us aren't taking care of them, it becomes a problem for our properties as well. I promise you, Shell, I will definitely make signs available before the election. It's just not time yet. It's a little bit early, and I don't want to jump the gun. There are some really interesting ways of controlling mosquitoes actually that exist now. So in Florida, they're using genetically modified mosquitoes where they sterilize the males. So the males, when they mate, the mosquitoes will only mate once. So the female will mate with the male. And the male will fertilize her with a non-viable thing that will not produce any females. And only female mosquitoes bite. The males don't bite. So it'll produce nothing but males. There will be no females. And the males that are produced, when they mate with females, half of the female mosquitoes will pass. And then a quarter of the females will pass. So releasing mosquitoes, these male genetically modified mosquitoes, has been very effective in some areas of Florida. And I think that might be an interesting thing for our region to pursue at some point, depending on costs and other things. But we have a lot of major expenses we have to take care of with a continuing resolution before we can talk about anything like that. The idea would be that you release them often enough, eventually they breed outward and they continue to push these genes in that are damaged on purpose to hurt the mosquitoes. Hi, Peter. Hello. We're going to go back inside this meeting here in just a few minutes. I just wanted to chit-chat with everybody a little bit first. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hi, Bethany. Welcome. I can promise bringing money to an area, better economics, will do a much better job at controlling insects and things than not, because it's going to bring the funds, and the businesses will be interested in controlling the insects in their areas, and it's going to make a deal. Gray, thank you so much. I wore this just for you. I really did. I was picking it out earlier, and I told my wife, I think Gray's really going to like this. Thanks. Thank you so much, Shane. I appreciate you. Those of you north of the border that are taking care of me and producing so many great things and so many great people. I love Canadian humor. I love Canadian hospitality. I think it's some of the finest in the world. And I'm a big fan of our hospitality in the South, but compared to Canadian hospitality, it's you guys have it down. Yeah, you guys are super friendly. As long as we don't make any jokes about you guys being French, you guys are always super friendly. I did discover that. I had a Canadian friend when I was in high school, and if I said anything about him being, like, going to French class or anything, he'd get rawr. Okay, let's go back in here, see how they spend some more of our money.
Looking into those things, but I did note that you can see kind of a downtick of revenues from 24 to 25, and that appears to be what it's related to. But the ending reserve is about 45% and 25% for solid waste.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Secretary?
Andy, thank you very much for putting this together. I wanted to ask for this. Can we see these same charts where we don't adjust for inflation?
Yep.
Because I pulled up the 2012 budget and, we were at $3 or $4 million for fund balance for general fund. So I think having inflation kind of, it normalizes out and looks at the trends, and I like that, but I'd like to see what what it was back in the day, past 15 years, and see what it is. And for that, you know, the policies I wanted the board to just, you know, have again, that's what we codified in our policies back in the day when different directors were here, and so let's just follow those policies, I think we are. And so I just appreciate putting this together, but I see the trend is showing me where we're at, but adjustment for relation is one thing, but I want to see what the actual dollars are when we're all said and done. Thank you, Mayor.
Director Rigo. Thank you. So Director, so this was just a look and a review. You didn't have any specific changes to the policy you wanted us to contemplate?
Yeah, I do have one I'm trying to contemplate. I think we should do something on the upper end. On the upper end, you know, the upper end, when you get too much of a fund balance, remember, these are, people are paying sales tax dollars expecting services to be done.
Yep.
And what I don't want to get into is where, this isn't, you know, some people want to treat this as a savings account. People don't pay sales tax or dollars in to save for a what if. They want to see us spending on roads, water, sewer, parks, transit, you know, police, fire. That's what they want us to spend it on. So I think there should be a cap that says if you don't spend a certain if you get a certain percentage, either you spend it or we're going to reduce taxes. And I truly believe there should be some number. That way, this board, future boards don't get into a point where you save, because the people who are paying these taxes expect services to be done. Improve police protection, improve fire protection, improve parks, transit services, water and sewer. So I think there should be some numbers, a 50, 60% number that says if you're above that number, either you spend it on what you need to be spending on, or you cut taxes somehow.
Yeah, well, I agree with that completely. So what you're saying is the way it would be rewritten would be, instead of just putting a floor of, 20%, if you go below 20%, you have to do X, Y, Z, you also would potentially want us to consider a ceiling, so that effectively you have a range.
Yeah, the range, and that way it would make future boards hold to those policies, so that way they can't just save, and not spend, because people want those services. And I look at the general fund, if you don't say you get to 70% for a couple of 2 years, rolling 2 years, then that should trigger us to say, we're gonna cut property tax by 1%. If you're not gonna spend it, we're gonna cut property tax, so that kind of what Paul talked about when we had, either you do it, or we're gonna do something, we're gonna cut property tax, so that way they save their money and not have to save it, we're not gonna save it on the back end for somebody just for whatever.
I think that's a very good idea, and I would also like to see some options for us to look at as far as how the policy could be adjusted to reflect Director Settle's idea.
I mean, I think it's like a rolling 2 years. You can't just do it 1 year. You don't do something over 2 years. And at that point, you might say, hey, we're above a certain percentage, and the board chooses that we can buy new police cars, we can have people, we can new, fire trucks, we can improve a park, equipment, we can add more transit service. I'm looking at general fund, but water, sewer should follow the same way, sanitation should follow the same way. All of them should follow the same way. If there's above a certain threshold, it's going to trigger us to do something, or we're going to cut taxes on those funds.
Thank you.
I wouldn't mind looking at rebates back to the citizens. I mean, you talk about cut taxes.
That's what I'm
I mean, we're talking about, water, and, we've had a big contention about, 40% of our water is being used by cities outside of us. I wouldn't necessarily have an issue with, I mean, if we have 29,000 residential meters and we remitted $100 back to everybody a year, that's $3 million, $2.9 million. I would be very open to doing something.
If you're above a certain percentage.
If you're above.
I think that's interesting number. I think the lower we've gotten pretty good. That's a pretty good spot. I think the upper is where I think we should really focus on and do something that way. You don't get some of the numbers we had from just inflation, 60, 70% fund balance. Some of that was ARPA funds, some of that was COVID funds. So there might be a way you can rewrite the policy. If you get federal directed spending, you can offset it. But if it's strictly citizens putting in the funds to do it, we need to spend it on what they say we should spend it on.
Well, and I think rewriting it to highlight that there's some upper end thresholds, I think just in general, this is a good thing, raises awareness about the general awareness of the existence of reserve funds. Because your point was a very salient one about, people, I don't think it's generally well understood that millions of dollars of the taxes that people pay every year go into what amount to savings accounts. You need them, you need the floor, you need to have the contingency funds, but there are some years, I mean, I'm almost certain that if there's any project that anyone with the sound of my voice has disagreed with spending associated with it over the last 5 to 10 years, that spending has come out of, in almost every case, a contingency reserve fund. And so the more that people have an awareness about it, driven by things like adding caps and things like that, I think just contributes overall to financial awareness in the city of how the money is utilized and spent, and I think that's a good thing.
Can you go to the street fund? The slide on the street fund, I think this is the best example I have. Yep, possible.
It's on page 2.
Right there. I mean, if you look at the street fund back in 2021, 2022, we were at 140%. You know, that's the gas tax, but I think at that point, I remember we had some discussions and that allowed us to buy more snow removal equipment. That allowed us to do the things, and it brought that number down. And then we did that on purpose to bring that, still at 70%, we're still at a high number, but that's only, $8 million in reserve, so it's a little difference, but I think those are the policies we should do. Maybe streets is a little different than general, maybe water's.
Right, well,
But I think there should be a cap on each of the 4 funds.
that's my thought. I'm wondering if these are state turnback funds, if that limits us to being able.
But maybe what that triggers
But
us,
we look at it.
we do more sidewalk work, or we can go and do other work.
Yeah.
Matt's team.
Yeah.
I was gonna say roundabout, but on that, didn't mind that, so I was kidding, so, I was just a joke, please take that as a joke. Striping trucks, we took striping on to help save money, that's saved us some money.
Sure.
So it can help us do stuff, so maybe the 4 funds are 4 different numbers, but I think there should be a complication.
Thank you. Any other comments on that item? You will be taking action on that. Thank you.
Well, I guess would you go back, come up with a plan and bring back to study session to the board with maybe an updated with the actual numbers, and we can revisit that, look at that, and then maybe that triggers us to throw it on the study session, or board action in the future. Bring it back to the study session with some suggestions.
Yeah, I'd second that.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll take a 10-minute recess, and we'll come back and finish up.
Recess. 10 minutes, then they're going to finish everything up. I'm not sure how much longer my batteries are going to keep going. We shall see. Welcome in, everybody. Hi, Donna. Welcome in.
Got a minute?
Yeah, I've got a minute. On the record or off the record?
Off the record.
Off the record. Darling, I'm going to leave you with everybody for just a minute. Okay. All right.
Hello, everybody. I've been trying to post more videos while we're here, making sure to chit chat with everybody. Trying to figure it out. It's a lot sometimes. Like, I've been sitting here waiting for it to upload, and it's like, come on now. Gotta keep touching it so it'll keep loading up. Loading, loading, loading. Videos loading. Hope everybody's been enjoying hanging out. Aw, thank you. Thank you very much. I hope everybody's weather's been cooperating for them. I know that it's starting to warm back up here. We had that little dip this last couple days of cold, and it's going to be nicer. So I hope to be able to get back outside and painting on the mural that I'm working on. Only 16% uploaded. Heavens to Betsy. He's still working on that thing. He gets little snippets of time here and there, it seems, so he doesn't get to do as much as he'd like to. You're warming up tomorrow. All right. It's at 20% uploaded now. It's so slow. It might be where I am right now. Hearing little other bits of conversation around me. I do wonder what they're talking about. What are my thoughts on the shirts? I like the shirts. I think the design is really fun, but I don't like t-shirts in general. So he got me an exercise top, which we're supposed to have some more tank top exercise tops available hopefully soon for everybody. And the plan is also to have some hoodies at some point. I'm not sure when. Don't ask me. He's the one that's in connection with our t-shirt person niece. Hello, hello. You love the gray one? Yes, it's very fun. Very, very fun. Suppliers, niece. Family members. You know, it's like a product nepotism. Product nepotism. Order from a family business. Or is it supplier nepotism? Yeah, support your loved ones. There are 65 people hanging out here and 4 over there. Hello, you guys. We're at 26% uploaded. It is slower than a snail. Thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you. Well, on the other one, we have 2 platforms running right now. So there's 57 here and 4 over there. Am I at a party? No, we are at a city council meeting. It is their study session. So they are having a little bit of a recess for the moment. It does. They're having a little recess. 10 minutes for people to stand up, stretch out, move their body just a little bit, wiggle. It's important. And make it fail. And after that, they'll get back to their very important meeting. Tell them who's the boss. You're funny. Okay, spill the beans.
Spill the beans.
Spill the beans.
He just wanted to ask me a question, kind of personal, so he didn't want his business to be aired. So I understand that, and I can totally respect that. You're okay. I'm talking to everybody right now.
That I would like to give you some of the videos.
Well, you want to say hi? Would you like to interview me sometime? Ask me some questions.
I would love to. You
Okay.
just make the time.
Let's do it right now. What do you want to ask me?
Okay. What are
Put me
some
on
of
the
your?
spot.
What are some?
I'm gonna render Mr.
Oh, okay. What are some of your objectives when you're running for mayor?
So changing the city to a mayoral form of government is my number
Okay.
1 objective. Number 2, I want to clean house and retrain anybody in our building and planning department that's involved with business coming to our area, that works with zoning, that works with compliance. All of that needs to be retrained. We tell too many businesses no. Rather than saying, how can we help you? We say, no, you can't do that. That's our city's problem.
Can I shorten it to,
Yeah.
you want to be more business friendly?
Well, business friendly is one thing, but specifically, what do I want to do? Because everybody, if you ask any mayoral candidate, they're all going to say, I'm going to be business friendly. Nobody's going to say, no, I'm against
That's
business.
true.
Okay,
True.
so I'm
That's
telling
a
you
good point.
specifically, the thing that holds business back in Fort Smith right now is if you go try to open a business, pick a location, and call downtown and say, hey, I want to do this over here. find out how they answer the phone. Well, no, you can't do that. Have you filled this form out? There's no help. It's entirely, it's like they're against you from the very beginning. So that has to change. That's
Okay,
huge.
I agree.
Okay, rezoning. We need to change our zoning. We have way too much R1 zoning in Fort Smith.
Which is
residential, basically
household,
one house
one structure.
on a structure.
Okay.
One person in a household. That's not how cities that are effective operate. It makes our city stretch out bigger and bigger and bigger, and we keep getting bigger, which means bigger water lines going further that have to be maintained, bigger roads that have to be maintained. When the city is more compact, then the taxes in that area pay for a smaller amount of roads, less water. So we have an incredible amount, and we keep growing out bigger and bigger. And let's go more to Chaffee Crossing, more to that, and all that involves a bigger infrastructure. And it's not just when we build it, but we have to maintain it for the years following. And it makes it less walkable. If you decide to start a business in downtown, you're not going to get the people from Chaffee Crossing to stick in the business, or vice versa. Our city gets too big, and it makes the business itself harder to do.
I think I got more of you, but you need to be on.
Mr. Mayor. Mayor, sorry if I said something out of the agenda, just something really brief. I just want to say, I had a comment I wanted to share, and this is the first time I believe I've seen all the candidates that I've noticed running for various offices here in attendance at the same time. And I intended to say this during the director's forum comments at the end of the meeting last week. I just want to say, even though there may be disagreements amongst us, welcome each of y'all into the participatory process. You're taking a step, each of you that are running for office, that 99% of citizens don't ever ultimately take in their life. That's no matter how your candidacies go, and that includes our friends here on the board that are also running for re-election. You're participating in a process, and thank you for doing that. And welcome to the field and being in the arena and the Teddy Roosevelt quote. That's all different than, as I'm sure you've been realizing now. So, like I say, we probably differ on a lot of things, but welcome into this portion of civic life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go to item number 4.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 4 tonight is a discussion requested by the board regarding audit provisions and third-party service provider contracts. The two most obvious contracts are the management agreements for the water park and the convention center, both of which have audit provisions in those agreements. They both have third-party operators of city-owned assets. However, the city does also engage in a limited number of public services agreements with local entities for provision of public services on the city's behalf. Some examples of those include the Animal Haven for Animal Shelter Services and the SRCA and the Area Agency on Aging for Senior Citizen Services. Outside of that brief introduction, and this as I said, this discussion was requested by the board members. I'll defer to the board.
Any comments?
To me, we spent a lot of time talking about auditing the water park. And then here there's a provision in the contract with the convention center to audit. I think we should follow the same procedures on audit the convention center. We give $750,000 or $600,000, sure, but we give every year $750,000 to the convention center. And there was no discussions about that at all during this whole looking at the water park audits. But yet, we do one year had an issue with the water park, and we have to do the audit. We should be doing audits every year, or we should do every other year. But if it's in our contract, we should be doing the audits. And so I'd like the same audit we're doing for the water park to follow the convention center.
If I might add, I did look up in the agreement with the convention center operator. There was a section regarding audit where the manager agrees to provide to the client within 120 days following the end of each operating year. A certified audit report on the accounts and records is kept by the manager for the facility.
Have we done
that? I believe they have provided us with financial records. That's something I'd have to confirm.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, I think this is a good thing. I think we need to do it on those entities that we do give dollars to. I think in all of our contracts it says that, all right? But I think we need to make sure we don't overburden our internal auditor. Are you thinking internal audit?
No, I'm thinking
external audit.
External audit, we should just put it there, do it, and then after that, we can, the audit team decide if they want to say, we're going to go to every third year for X or every year for Y, and then maybe some are just done.
I mean,
Maybe if some are not done every year, maybe.
I guess my thought process is we pick one, we do it this year, next one.
I think the water park and the convention center should be done this year without,
Okay,
twice.
I'm cool with that.
And then the discussion should be for the board is, do we do other ones?
So you talked about the convention center, we talked about animal shelter, and, we talked about.
Thank you so much.
Citizen services, like who else would fall into that?
There aren't very many of those, and that's the ones that I just recounted are the ones that are applicable at this point.
Okay.
Would that be agency on aging, would that be your senior citizen?
Yes.
Would that be the Fort Smith Museum of History?
Yes.
So it'd be those four,
That we approved specifically.
four specifics, and then it would be your outside services.
So can, like for the Fort Smith Museum of History, we give them, what's it, $15,000, something like that? What? 20. So, does that really give us the ability to audit them in the fact that we're only funding a portion?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I wouldn't think so, other than if you could, ascertain or have it be certified that, yes, this is what the,
Right,
how they
I
utilize the
agree with
money.
that. I think the main difference between, I'll use the water park and the convention center, those are city-owned assets that we are contracting with someone else to operate for us. So I think that's a specific kind of relationship. I think these other ones are entities that exist for purposes other than serving the city, and we then contract with them for limited service to the public. And I think that is a different answer.
Yeah, those that we're primarily funding, I think, we've got to make sure that those things are.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So Jeff, what would you need from us to start the same process on the convention center? To follow what we did with the water park?
Well, first I'm going to confirm what financial records and audits that we do get from them, because the agreement does provide that we should get that every year. So we'll see what we've got.
I guess I'd like to follow this, if we follow the same type of audit we did for our park with them, and that includes the food, their management fee, all that stuff. I think we should follow the same thing, that we're matching apples to apples as much as possible. I mean, we give them $750,000 a year to run the convention center. We've done it for how many years, and I'm not saying nothing's wrong with what they're doing, but I think that if we're gonna have discussion on one area, we should have discussion on the other.
I think it's our fiduciary responsibility.
That's exactly right. Thank you, Jeff.
I mean, just to answer your question, I think that you can, we will
So what you find and come back to us.
investigate the cost and the parameters and everything, the same type of audit, the agreed upon procedures type of
Sounds good.
audit that we did before. I mean, I imagine the cost would be pretty much the same. Also, probably is attributable to operating cost of the center, so.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else on that item? Go to the next item.
The next item tonight is a review of water conservation measures as codified in the Fort Smith Municipal Code. This discussion was requested by the board after the incident last summer, where water conservation measures were implemented, but the city's ability to ensure compliance and enforcement of the measures came into question. To further address this matter and kick off the board's discussion is Lance McAvoy, Director of Water Resources.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Does, okay. Basically, there is a presentation that I included in the slide, or in the packet. A lot of that is just information on what the water conservation measures are and what it does. In my talks with administration, I think the focus of what was requested was enforcement. And I know Director Martin, you're the one that asked for this, so I'm gonna kind of look to you on that.
I think my biggest concern, the thing that I heard the most was, citizens were asking me about their conservation, and specifically, they looked at the car washes, and they said, why am I, some of these people are spending money on yards and shrubbery and organic gardens, those kinds of things, and they're doing what they can do, and it's specifically, car washes are specifically mentioned, and there's not any mechanism for conservation for car washes. There are mechanisms for auto dealers that are washing cars. They can only do it on a couple days a week, but the car washes were just blowing and going. Now, I don't know if there's some sort of system that they use with their recycling water, things like that. I'm not familiar with how they do business, but it seems like a lot of our citizens were abiding by the rules, and that looked, I'm not gonna say egregious, but that was a heavy use of water by the car wash. And we had a lot of car washes that popped up over the last week.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, yes, car washes do use a large amount of water, but the majority of what we saw during that conservation period that caused the issues really was not car wash driven, it was irrigation driven. And, you know, driving down Rogers Avenue, when you go by a large entity at 8 o'clock in the morning, and not only are they watering during conservation, but they're watering the street and the sidewalk, which is expressly forbidden when there's not water conservation. I mean, under the normal use, you're not supposed to do that. And they did it every single day that we were under water conservation. Here's, this is actually out of the presentation, and what I want to point out is the Loose Tank, the Jack Freeze, and Wildcat Mountain. And knowing about where you live, Wildcat Mountain is, you know, very important to both of us because we live in that same area of town. And, you know, what we saw here, this is where the leak actually began, the blowout, if you will. And it stayed low because we weren't filling the tank. We isolated Loose Tank, that's the one behind Target. But you can see Jack Freeze, it dropped and dropped and dropped, and we were still pumping. And when you looked at some individual days, you can see where Howard Hill, Fiena Hills, you know, you would have this peak and valley, and what was happening is, and we actually, if we looked at it on a daytime, one day, 24-hour period, you would see it gaining for a bit, and then about 9 o'clock, it'd start to lose, and you hit about midnight, 1 o'clock, and it would drop out till about 4 a.m. because sprinklers are turning on. And then after 4 a.m., the one thing that you never really normally see is a recharge of a reservoir or a tank during daylight hours, during early morning hours. We were actually making up what we were losing during the nighttime in irrigation during the day. So to that end, we were receiving calls right and left. My neighbor is watering, and we're under water conservation. Isn't there something you can do? Would you tell your neighbor that we're please under water conservation? Would you tell them that? Oh, I yelled it at them. And, you know, they'll post on Facebook, I pay for the water, I'll use the water. And I understand where the frustration comes from. Car washes being industry, you know, do we then limit what we can use in hospitals? Do we then limit what other manufacturers can use that are heavy water users? There is some guidelines on how much water is used during the time period on a car wash, because they have to pay a water bill too. So the less water that they can utilize for what they're charging, the more profitable their organization is. If this board wishes to include a car wash provision in the ordinance, that is up to this board. And what that looks like, administration and myself would need some direction to do that. Biggest thing that I think I saw through that is actual enforcement. So say we did include car wash. How do we enforce water conservation? What are we doing to stop those people from watering on, you know, if we're in phase 1 and you're supposed to do, you know, odd houses on odd days and even houses on even days, and somebody's watering every day, what is our mechanism to enforce that? That's where, since I've been to the city, 1996, to my knowledge, there's never been an enforcement action on water conservation. We've had it.
We've got it on the books, there's
Yes.
charges associated with it,
Well,
which I'm not advocating
Start on page 68, I want to jump in because you answered my question. I was gonna ask, and it goes to kind of what I talked about last week about, do you have just political pieces of paper in the law, or do you actually enforce the things? And I was gonna ask you, has there ever, or even just last year, but you answered it even further, was anybody prosecuted, penalized for a first, second, or third violation? And what you said a moment ago was that in your entire time with the history of the city, dating back to the 1990s, you're not aware of anybody ever paying a penalty for noncompliance under section 25-142. So, I mean, I don't know that we're gonna solve it tonight, but I think we would certainly probably like to hear some ideas around what could be done from an enforcement standpoint to help modify the behavior that's against the law, because clearly section 25-142 is not doing it. If your service dates back to the 1990s and it's essentially never happened.
Yeah, and one of the problems that we run into, and I'll be truthful with you, I appreciate Director Martin bringing this up to put on here. I always read it, when I had read through this multiple times before, that it was a penalty, but it's actually not. A citation has to be written, it has to go to court, and you have to be convicted of violating water conservation. So when that happens, who writes the citations? Well, we've got 3 groups, to my knowledge, that can write citations. The fire department with the fire marshals, the police department, and neighborhood services. It's the only ones, in my knowledge, in the city that can write any type of citation. All 3 of those groups have enough on their plate than to be water cops. So what do we do about that? And I'll be truthful with you, right now, I don't have a good answer. It's something that I'm researching to find what other cities are doing. Because it is something Director Sill, and I'm just going to kind of say, at one point in time he said, hey, during those hot times of year, maybe we go to phase 1 conservation for a month's period so that we don't have to, so it extends the life of the water supply, and we're not having to worry about hitting our maximum daily demand. And that would be great if we have a way to enforce it, but it's just like, how many times have we heard about people running red lights? Well, as soon as the police department starts writing tickets in a certain area, that stops. As soon as people start getting penalized for violating water conservation, the violations will decrease.
And I wonder if it's not worth, as you move forward and there is an opportunity, because to Director Sill's very valid point, this is supposed to be a tool, water conservation is supposed to be a tool to extend the capacity when it's under strain. And so if the compliance is none, if it's not happening, it makes me wonder if, I'm sure data would show, you can look at areas where, or even you could see where violations of this section of the ordinances are occurring. And it does make me wonder, to your point, if there were some citations issued in areas that have heavy non-compliance, would that have the impact of, they're actually doing something about this? Perhaps, perhaps I should be more diligent with my water conservation measures. And I think that effect would happen whether or not ultimately the ticket was adjudicated in court successfully.
It could.
Did we see a decrease in water usage during that time? I mean, did conservation actually take place?
No.
No?
Well, I take that back. We did see a slight decrease, and it was really in areas that were not impacted by the break that we had, northern area of town, and part of the far western area of town. The reservoirs, we weren't having the issues with that. Most of it was from the central area, basically around Luce and Crow Hill, Wildcat, Theana Hills, Chaffee Crossing, Tank, those south of that area, that's where we saw, and that's where we were already hurting. So we were running pumps. We actually ran the system higher than we have ever run the system before.
What do you mean by that?
We were actually putting more water from Lake Fort Smith through the pipes that we had. We actually were pulling more than what we should have pulled from Lee Creek during that time frame to help make up for it. And our pumps were running nonstop, 24 hours a day. Some of the pumps that normally cycle twice a day, we were having to run the whole time just to keep up with the demand.
You're running higher pressure?
Higher, some of it was higher pressure at times. I will tell you, there have been a few things. This is a little bit off water conservation. We did learn some stuff. Matt and Jimmy Johnson, who's here tonight, actually did a crossover connection. So should we have that type of break happen again in that same area, we'll be able to remediate some of the challenges that we had, which is nice to know that we've got that. But here again, that one we didn't know at that time. We now know, we've got it fixed, but what about the ones we don't know? So water conservation, and here's the sad part, we could produce, we had the water in the reservoirs at Lake Fort Smith and Lee Creek. It's the in-town reservoirs that were draining so fast that we could not catch up because we had to take a 7.5 million gallon tank out of service.
I wonder if there's something we could do instead of penalizing, if we could incentivize the positive conservation. I mean, what if we cut some, $25 off your bill if you lessen your usage or something like that? That'd be something that I'd like to maybe look at. It's gonna cost money, but I think that'd be something interesting to look at. Incentivize the positive rather than penalizing it.
I'm trying to get with other municipalities, those in Northwest Arkansas and Central Arkansas.
This is the default, right?
This is the default. This is what has been in place, and I don't remember when this exact language. Now, I will say that in 2004, 2005, and part of 2006, when Lake Fort Smith, the new dam was being built, we had to go into phase 2, I believe, water conservation. And the public understood that because we were actually pulling from the tailwater side. We were in a massive drought, and most of the people were complying. We still had people that weren't, and I witnessed that. So to that end, I'll see what I can find.
But yeah, I think that's the default, to penalize those that are abusing, but we could maybe look at it the other way. Maybe that provides us something to go off of. So, okay, very good.
Do you have something else?
No, I'm just waiting to see if anybody else
Any
has
other
anything.
questions?
So Lance, I want to kind of talk about this one and maybe start talking about the next one, kind of. And the reason why is I didn't see anything in here that, summer's hot, water's going. What conservation measures do our outside group do? How do we enforce conservation matters to the 42% of the water users outside the city?
So, and I'll.
If you don't have any,
Well, actually, there's really good answers in that. In several of our expired contracts that we currently have, there was language, and it's in the new contract, that they have to have the same water conservation measures or more stringent than what we do. And if we see that their water usage has not dropped during water conservation being enacted, we can hit them with a surcharge.
I would go a different direction.
Okay?
I think that if there's water conservation measures by the city, the first place that happens is we go and, and I'm using a metering valve, but we go and we slow the metering valve to a certain percent so they can't go over a certain amount. I think that if we're gonna have our citizens go for water conservation matters, then we should say, hey, you've got a meter that is I'll use an example, 8-inch meter, now we're gonna throttle it down to 6-inch, and we're gonna force you to this instead of penalizing, we're just gonna say, that's all the water you get. And then that way, those cities can say, okay, well, City of Fort Smith doing water conservation, we're doing the same thing, and we've only got X amount of gallons, and, you know, they run out. I mean, I'm not trying to run people out of drinking water, but there's a point to where either, you know, penalizing, you know, what kind of what Neil says, I don't think anybody's gonna write tickets. I think the better thing is start throttling things back. Enforcing technology. There's 11 outside cities or groups that use it. I think we should have 11 meters that we can go and turn, ratchet down and say, okay, it's closed by X% and you're gonna be throttled by this, and that way they're gonna do that, and then we do something in town same time.
Yeah, flow restriction devices.
Yeah, enforced actual restriction was something that crossed my mind too, and so I would like to see, number one, what the current, I mean, if there is anything that currently allows us to do that, and what the cost would be to, implement the technology to do that.
And the other thing is, I didn't see in here that maybe instead of a fine, you just turn the meter off.
And that was something that, again, if we change it, we can do. Yeah, I mean, as you said.
You're talking irrigation maybe?
I'm talking about, let's say we're on heavy restriction and somebody's violated 3 times in a row. Neil Martin's watering his yard 3 times in a row. Lance goes by there and sees it 3, I'm using Neil's account. Then the water department should be able to say, look, you violated, turn it off, and now you're gonna have to pay a reconnection fee to start back up. That would be your fine.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make it punitive, but I think there's a point where there were people that were blatantly just violating it no matter what, knew that, were told and still did it. And I'm trying to get to where, not to penalize somebody forgot, I'm trying to, somebody says that they were told and just blatantly forgot, they just chose not to.
Yeah, and I will tell you that, staff and I were discussing that during that time frame, and that was one of the things that they had actually brought, can we just not go through and turn people off? And I said, well, you'd have to have a proof that we talked to them, you know, X number of times, but if you point,
They just slow their flow down.
that becomes very costly on the city, because you'd have to put a flow restrictor device on every meter.
Well, maybe you don't, maybe it's the ones that are violating, just throw something on there. I'm not trying to penalize people, I'm looking at not the curves that we have, we're looking at, a lot of people are using water, it's 55 million gallons a day, and we need the basics to fundamentally drink and survive, not to worry about people's drinking yards. And that's all I'm trying to do, but I think we've got to do something on the outside, because I've asked this question in the past, there's not really anything we do, they're supposed to, but I think we should technology to kind of put those parameters in, because the outside people, groups, I think they end up using more when we come to conserve in the city. And yeah, it sounds good, but they're not paying a higher premium, so I think we should do something there.
Thank you, Mayor. Is this process maybe just as simple as if people do not reflect the usage, talking about outside people in that regard, then the water usage rate goes up per CCF for these outside users that did not take any conservation measures, that we can recoup costs for extended pumps that have had to overrun?
Yeah, that's where the surcharge comes in to that.
I think also communication, I think as simple as, even as, I know there's an expense, but if there's a zone of the city that, you know, we have the mail system now that's intelligent enough to identify and send someone a postcard and say, you know, your water tower, you know, for the next 2 weeks is under massive construction, or we have an issue that we're being addressed, you know, did people know? You know, and I know that we're gonna say, well, we did all we could, but that's where, you know, Josh B. Fink should be on the 5 o'clock news, he should be at the 10 o'clock news, you should have got a postcard in there, you know, spend some time communicating, and then you might, I think people are more apt to do it. I don't like the idea of restricting water. I think that's a liability that I don't really feel comfortable touching. But I do think communication probably was not as high as we think it was. And I think if we could have done targeted communication, and golly, just get on there and show a graph, you know, hey, Fianna Hills, you're not doing so hot. Maybe you need to stop watering your yards. Just a little call out, a big thank you to the east side of town. This could make, Neil's give me 5. I mean, give him data. I mean, let him go on there and, we need to be over communicating, kind of like Cook Elementary doing the best grade gets a pizza party, right? So, hey, this side of town, you're not carrying the weight. And apparently you haven't seen this, and listen, this is gonna cause concerns, and we've gotta work together. I mean, ultimately, it is our prerogative to not get into these measures. And I think ultimately we need to be fixing generators and systems and water line infrastructure and things of that nature. But when we get to this sort of situation and we know there's a high cost, I'd say let's ramp up the communications, even if it comes at an expense. So that it's not that the citizens are to blame, it's, hey, we communicated with you. To me, I think of the axiom, the shepherd never blames the sheep. And so, did we lead people well to conserve better? And I think that's the evaluation I take from what we've just went through.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, if there's nothing else.
I guess we kind of blended item 7, if there's nothing more, well, are we on item 7?
I wasn't really addressing that in my comments, so I would like to.
I do have a comment on 7 as well, yes.
We will, if there's no more comments on 5, 6.
I just said 6, that's it.
6, right, 6 is what we
Okay, correct.
Let's go back to
Actually, I have
6.
a comment on 7 too.
Sure, so item 6 to 9 is an introduction and discussion of a standardized draft, non-retail wholesale surplus user water agreement. The city has a number of wholesale customers on the water system. 3 of the wholesale customers have special conditions, but as many as 10 others have or have had different versions of a contract for water with Fort Smith. Staff and the city attorney have worked up a standardized form of a contract to use for these customers, and that draft is presented to you this evening. Tonight, we're discussing the form of this agreement only. The applicable wholesale rate is determined separately by ordinance. With the board's concurrence as to the form of the standardized agreement, staff can start the process to get those customers with expired contracts back under contract. Mr. McAvoy will address.
Mr. Dingman did a great introduction for me, and I will sit for questions.
Okay, Director Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I would come back to reiterate, I know that there's a shared sentiment of, full-time servants, all this and that. To find that there are 7 agreements that are expired is disheartening. We have paid professionals. Someone should have caught this, especially since 1959, for the city of Mountainburg, or 1989. I mean, I was born in 83. You're looking at a guy that is sitting that boggles me. I understand it. I don't want to limit it too hard here, but I'm not happy. I'm not happy to see a report. It causes opening of Pandora of other questions that make me want to search into this. And I don't like it. I just want to make that known. I'm not normally a negative guy, but 7 agreements, unacceptable. And I don't know who to ask more questions of. I don't understand how we got here, but I totally support the standardization of this. Thank you to staff and administration for bringing this forward, because this is not good. Thank you.
Any other comments?
So this is a surplus user water agreement. When does surplus water come into play here? Because there are a lot of days that we don't we don't use 50 million gallons a day, which is our max capacity from our 2 water sources. But there are days that we're starting to get close. We had some information where we're getting close to maxing it out. Like, is this an average of our water, or can we nail it down to specific periods of time? We've got to have some cooperation with
us, we being the primary, we've spent the money to build the treatment capacity, to build the water, reservoirs, all those things. Do we have, or should we put something in there that protects the citizens of Fort Smith first in these high water days?
So there are protections in there. We are first and foremost the users. We have in this language that we can restrict their usage. And when we're seeing those high usage days, note that that's everyone. That's the surplus water users and the citizens of Fort Smith.
To me, there's no surplus water user in a day that we're 40 plus millions of gallons.
Right. So, and I'm gonna go a little in the weeds, and I hope that's okay with you, but I wanna kind of explain that, and I actually took some direction from some stuff that Director Settle said, some stuff that other board members have said. One of the studies that I did, and there are 3 systems that are in that list that I don't have the data from. 4. I asked for their sales. What are they selling to their customers volume-wise? Because we know what they're buying from us. And I started looking at their unaccounted for water. There are a couple of systems that have very, very high unaccounted for water. One of them actually knew that they were at 70%. Okay, so their customers are paying for the water they're using plus 70% over that.
And that water's not making it down.
Well, no, it's actually going through Fort Smith. It's one of the southern users.
But it's not making it to my house or your house or anybody.
It's going to this other entity, and it's not making it into their people's houses either. So, looking at that, Director Settle had mentioned, hey, we need to kind of look at how much water they're using. In this agreement, looking at their unaccounted for water, over a 5-year period, the plan is to do 2 things. Number 1, reduce the amount of water for those that have very high unaccounted for water year over year, so that it forces them to maintain their system, because in the old contracts, all the old contracts said, you will maintain your system. Well, they haven't. Otherwise, they wouldn't have 50% unaccounted for water or higher. If they don't do that, and this is also kind of from where the board said we need to, if they use more, they need to pay more. We have a tiered surcharge on it. So if they are over a certain percentage of what we're going to put in their contract, either on a monthly basis or daily basis, if we can measure by days, they'll actually pay a surcharge for that. And that will then provide more revenue for us to go in towards the system to hopefully fund the projects we need. So by reducing their unaccounted for water, forcing them to maintain their system, that then reduces the demand on the plants and reservoirs, and again, extends the life, and we don't see those max days as quickly as we're seeing them, because what you saw, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, was based on total system usage, contract water users, and Fort Smith, and that's where we were seeing those peak days of 48 to 50 so quickly.
What, 2 weeks ago?
Wasn't that 2 weeks? Yeah, study session?
Oh. You weren't, 2 weeks ago, we didn't use 48.
No. The study said, I apologize.
Oh my gosh, I was about to say we're gonna be in trouble.
Now, I will tell you that we did see a spike in water usage about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, when we had the cold water, weather. So we have to take into account there. So to answer your question, yes, we have the methodology in here to restrict it. Putting in flow restriction devices is something that was in the old contract that we can add to this contract. We had just taken that out because we have the surcharges, but that is not a problem to have that back in.
The impetus for water rate increases a couple years ago, in my mind, was, number 1, we were getting questions of not having water in certain parts of the city.
That was number one. Second was the bond covenants and things like that, or the debt service coverage ratio. But if, and we're talking about a water transmission line that's potentially $500 million, along the treatment system. We've got to do everything we can to lengthen that time in which we are at risk. No, not lengthen the time at risk, but shorten the time of the risk that we've got, so that we are not facing days in the summer where we're hitting 40+ million gallons.
Lengthen the time in which our infrastructure can support
Yes,
the needs
yes,
of the city of Portsmouth.
Yes, yes.
I fully agree with you.
So we need to get these things going in 26. I mean, are we in agreement in that?
That's why we're bringing this.
All right.
So,
Thanks, Lance. I guess I have two questions here. One is, this is a 10-year agreement, correct?
yes.
This doesn't affect the rate side, so this would just be just a water agreement. So is there anything that is 10 years too long? Should it be like a rolling 5? I know the provisions in here with 5 years, and there's some things you talked about, but is 10 too long for future boards to look at?
10 is what is kind of an industry standard and what I've seen around the state. You can see up here that we had some as long as 20 to 30. That is ridiculously long. Because we have so many coming up to do, I would recommend 10. To your question on rates, this board, there's language in the agreement as well. If the board amends the rate ordinance, we give them 30 days of what their new rate is, and then that goes into effect. So it doesn't tie it to the rate, it just ties the provisions of what they have to do.
I've seen here the AWA, American Water Standards, is in this document. My question is, let's go back to what Neil talked about. Let's say we're gonna, AWWA standards. My question is, let's say we're gonna upgrade the water treatment plant at Mountain Prairie. And it costs, a fictitious number, please, let's say it's $50 million, okay? And we know that everybody outside the city of Portsmouth is 42%, I'll just call it 50. Is there provisions in here that says, hey, we got a capital, there's certain capitals that are gonna be shared by everybody, we're gonna raise 25 million by the city and 25 million by the outside services?
It is.
Because if it's not, that has to be agreed in here, we gotta have certain capital that has to be shared. Because what I'm not gonna do is put the onus back on the city of Portsmouth. Period. They did it too many years, and the rates were way too low back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s. So I use that example, if it's $50 million, half of it's paid for inside, half of it's paid for outside, is this language in the contract allows the city for the transmission lines, the treatment plants, and both of them, those shared services by all of us. And I get, Mountain Bird's closer than Fort Smith, and Winslow's just around the corner, but it's still a shared service. It should still pay their fair share. So I think if there's not language in the contract, I'd ask for that to be put in there somehow. So that way they know that if it's for certain capital, and it's a 10 years, so if something massively changes, we get a third water supply or something changes like that, we could redo it. But I would ask that we put something in there to make sure everybody pays their fair share.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Seeing none.
Well, yes, not as it relates to item 6, but I did have 2 quick requests for Jeff and Maggie.
Go ahead.
And I'd like to hear something back one way or the other within the next couple of weeks. Number one, I'd just like to look and see, I've been hearing a lot of feedback along B Street, heading to the west, like towards downtown between North Side and 12th Street. There's a number of crosswalks. Have heard, tell, and seen myself some
Yes,
near
Kevin,
misses
there
in the
are like
crosswalks.
10 different
So I was wondering if we
communities.
could price out and see about getting the blinking signs that go with those crosswalks. On 10 grand per set, okay. Is that, I don't mean, I guess what was the cost of like blinking stop signs? Like, I'm not talking about the auto, I'm not talking about, hey, you have to push a button or anything like that. I'm literally talking about the flashers.
Flashing stop signs like we put up.
No, excuse me, I'm sorry. not putting in stop signs. What I'm saying is, I believe right now, there's the crosswalks, and they have the diamond-shaped yellow.
Yes.
I would just like to see solar panel flashing, illuminating ones that indicate to the driver, hey, there's a crosswalk here. Not a system like we have on Grand Avenue where you push a button and all that kind of stuff, or even ones that I've seen elsewhere where they're instigated by, literally just like the flashing stop signs that we have in some places in town that just increase visibility. I would just like to look into the possibility of those, and, you know, if you guys could just report back what options are there. And then I heard tell from some constituents, the Italian flag at Cisterna Park is tattered in a state of disrepair, so if we could get a new flag up the flagpole. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. In the same spirit, I'd like to make a motion, and we'll need a second, to put an agreement on the consent agenda for the city to contract services with Colin Benzinger for the purposes of a national recruitment for the position of the city administrator.
Second.
On the next meeting, correct?
Thank you, Director Moore. Any other comments? Director Good.
Yeah, just to follow up, I believe, from last week, Director Rigo had brought up, a possible study session sometime soon, upcoming about, Alvarez street lighting. I was wondering when that's gonna come up.
March 10th.
Thank you.
I think it was requested.
I think it was Alvarez Street lighting. Yeah, the Sixth Street.
Yeah.
We only have one study session in March.
Thank you.
I'm
Is
sure.
there, is there any spirit of that, since that's a study session where we have citizens forum, that we would be in the main room versus being in here?
If we make that happen, I would agree with that.
Put it in the main.
Is that?
It is planning commission, but the agenda is not super long, so it'd be fine.
You looked at the preliminary agenda, I'm sure.
I have.
Okay, good.
We've added to it, sir. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Well, there we go.
Is there an algebra?